Welcome back to the Myrtle Woods Homestead. So today we're going to be talking about another prepper myth, long-term food storage. Should be an exciting one, stay with me. But before we do, we got to make sure all the animals are fed and the morning chores are done. And just like fate would have it, here we go. We got the little ducklings and chicks in the brooder. And for those of you guys that don't know, I always hatch ducks and chicks together so they imprint on each other. Chickens are very domesticated animals. Ducks are not. And so by having the ducks and chicks together, the ducks will follow the chicks. So it's a free way to train your ducks to go into the coop every night, and it teaches them how to do some of the scratching and pecking that chickens do naturally. Ducks do it too, but it's a way for them to learn off each other, and it's a way to, like I said, teach your ducks to go in the coop without having to, chase after them or corral them. So that's why I always do it together, and I always have great results. So we'll let these guys get warm under the brooding lamp, and we'll go back to talking about the important topic of today: prepping myths, long-term food storage. Let's get to it. Sheep are silly. Every time one of them finds something, they all have to find it together. They're silly critters. Then we have Oakley, our black Angus. She's very important to our long-term food storage, even though there's a lot of people that don't believe you can be sustainable homesteading, nor do they believe homesteading provides anything of value for long-term food storage. That just isn't true. So we're gonna start this video out with some screenshots, okay? And this is just atypical of what I see whenever we're talking about long-term food storage. Now, obviously I have my own thoughts and beliefs, but they're based upon empirical data and science, okay? So I'm gonna show you my concerns when we're talking about food storage. Then I'm gonna show you what the knee-jerk reaction from the preparedness community atypically is. And then we'll look at the facts and science and see where it leads us. So there you have it. Those are some screenshots that I grabbed from a conversation I had with somebody on long-term food storage. And again, these are atypical of the visceral reactions that we see. People don't like to have their views challenged. That's obvious. And so we're going to kind of go over that. And for those of you guys watching, yes, I'm out on business again. We're here in the big city. I'm in a hotel room. I'm not at my homestead. So this is going to be a shorter trip than usual. But I figured I haven't made a video in a bit, so I'd get one out to you guys. But we're going to talk about the 7 long-term food storage prepper myths that I get out there that people, for some reason, buy into, and we're going to dispel them using empirical logic, data, science, math, all the good stuff that brain space of yours is supposed to be doing. So without further ado, let's get started with prepper myth number 1. So prepper myth number 1 on long-term food storage: are calories more important than nutrient density? And every single time I watch videos on this or I do independent research, whenever we're talking about long-term food storage, RDA is never mentioned. Calories are always mentioned, but RDA is never mentioned. And if you can find a video where RDA is actually mentioned and explained in any value, let me know. Link it in the in the comment section below. I'd really like to take a look at it. I know I've done some videos where I include RDA. I don't know why RDA is discussed more. recommend daily allowance. I mean, literally, when you're looking at foods, it's on the same fucking label, my dude, right? You have calories, and then you have the RDA breakdown, you have nutritional value breakdown, everything from sodium levels, vitamins, what it's preserved in, ingredient list. I mean, like I said, it's all in the same fucking label. So I don't know why the preparedness community, is so bent around the axle of calories. Now, calories are important. Make no mistake. I believe calories are important. I think that there are important reasons to look at calories. Obviously, calories are what powers the body, right? But it's also important to realize that calories are different. Not all calories are the same, right? A calorie is not something that the body sees the same depending on the food. 100 calories of chocolate is going to be utilized by the body differently than 100 calories of broccoli. That's a fucking fact. That there's nothing that you can. I mean, that's empirical data. That's truth. That's science. And so, knowing that, I feel like calories is an important metric, but in the grand scheme of things, when you compare it to nutrient density, it's really dwarfed, right? I look at it like, take a game of football, right? If we're looking at football and we're only looking at field goals, right? Well, you're missing a big portion of football, right? You have, everything from running plays, passing plays, touchdowns, touchbacks. You have all sorts of other aspects of football other than just field goal attempts. And when we're looking at food, when you look at calories, that's what it is. In my opinion, it's important. It's like a field goal. It can, it can be a make or break depending on where you're at. But the hard, laborious work involved that sets the pathway is really going to be your nutrient density, right? So biological value, macro, micro, these are all important aspects of health, all important aspects of long-term food storage and overall of life, right? I mean, you can have the most calorie-dense foods in the entire world, and yeah, that's good for, energy short-term, but long-term, it'll still kill you, right? It'll still kill you, not having good nutrient density. Illnesses, you're more susceptible to illnesses, diseases, all that stuff. So, yes, calories are important, but I believe, and the science bears out, that nutrient density is even more important. So, again, I think that you should look at both. I'm not saying don't look at calories, but to look at only calories and only be hyper-focused on calories and totally disregard RDA is a big disservice to you, to your families, your friends, whoever you are, you elect to be prepared for. You're doing yourself a great disservice. So I encourage you guys, while you're looking at the label, right, while you're looking at calories, please, if you could, just take a few seconds and read down that same fucking label and see what other shit's on it, right? Let's talk about prepper myth number 2. Number 2, I'm going to start as a question, right? What makes rice, beans, wheat, corn, flour, all these different food items that we consider to be long-term food, long-term storage food, etc. What makes it long-term, right? Is it the food itself that makes it long-term, or is it the fact that it's preserved in a way that lasts for a long time that we consider to be long-term food storage? And this is very important. This is really important. This is kind of the crux of what it is that we're talking about, right? This is what I'm trying to portray to you. The reason why people consider rice, beans, flour, corn, wheat, all these things to be long-term food storage items is because when preserved correctly, they last a long time. You can keep them and you can store them for long periods of time, and it is relatively easy to preserve these food items. That is the only thing that makes them appealing long-term food survival foods. So with that being said, yes, it is important, and I think that if you want to have lots of rice and beans and you have a really good working pantry that includes these items, or you're just planning on, it's just an easy thing to store whatever the fuck it is you want. I've never told anybody they can't store whatever the fuck they want. Please store this shit. I have this shit stored up as well. But with that being said, I also understand the RDA component, right? I understand the nutrient density value to having a well-balanced diet. And it goes without saying, it's empirical. You want to have a well-balanced diet because that's going to be good for health, longevity, all these different things. So with that being said, right, the only thing that makes these food items considered good long-term food storage items is not the items themselves. It's the fact that they can be preserved, and they can be preserved relatively easy for a longer shelf life. But guess what? You can store nutrient-dense foods with a long shelf life as well. All your leafy greens, fruits, vegetables, animal products, they can all be stored long-term as well, right? So moringa, superfood, it can be stored long-term just like corn can. Animal products can be stored long-term just like rice and beans can. Leafy greens, foods, fruits, vegetables, berries, nuts, they can be stored long-term just like wheat can. So I'm not saying don't store these things, and you're probably going to hear me say that a couple more times. I'm not saying don't store them, but I also encourage you, and I don't see how this is controversial at all, look at the RDA of other food items and try to get more nutrient-dense foods into your long-term food storage. So remember, the only thing that makes long-term food storage survival foods or long-term food storage is not the food items themselves, it's how they're preserved to make them last a long time. And all foods can be preserved to last a long time, even those that are considered healthy. All right, let's go to myth number 3. Number 3, this is directly going to those that are going to have a visceral reaction, right? Since we know foods can be stored for long-term food storage purposes if done properly, why is it bad to discuss more nutrient-dense foods to begin with, right? And this is the part that I don't get. I don't know why people have such a visceral reaction to talking about, well, maybe we should store higher quality foods. Maybe we should look at storing high quality foods, right? I don't understand why it's not controversial to these people, right? And again, if you can show me one video out there, one YouTube video out there that actually talks about the RDA of food and nutrient density when it comes to long-term food storage, please let me at least give them a view. Let me at least, post it here so other people can look at it. Let's look at this stuff because this is really important. I don't know why it's okay to say store rice, beans, flour, corn, wheat, right? But not, hey, let's store some leafy greens, moringa, bok choy, high quality fruits, vegetables, nuts, high quality animal products, whether that be chicken, salmon, beef, pork. I don't see how turkey, right? I don't see how this is considered controversial. I don't see what's controversial about it at all. I don't know why it's okay to store, rice, beans, flour, wheat, but it's not okay to store, again, high quality produce, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and high quality animal products. Maybe my haters can explain and articulate in the comment section below. All right, let's talk about myth number 4. Number 4, long-term food storage is just for long-term foods, in the idea that they're not for everyday use. Big myth, big myth. A lot of people think, well, I'm storing up, because a lot of people store up long-term food storage items that they don't actually plan to eat every day, or they don't actually eat every day in their real life. And so there's this idea, and there's this perpetual, ideology in the preparedness community that the foods that I store for long-term food storage are just in case the shit hits the fan scenario. They're not for every day. No, if that's how you want to live, if that's how you want to do it, that's fine. You can absolutely do that. But the idea that that's the only way it can be done or should be done, or just because it's been historically done that way is best working practice, I completely disagree with that. There's no backing for it. I eat a certain way here in modern day 2021, and as you can see, I eat a lot because of how chubby I am. You guys can easily see that. So I am used to a certain diet that I have. I like bacon omelets in the morning. I like to have chicken wings for lunch. I like to have steak, ribeye, filet mignon, backstrap. I love to have that for dinner time. That's just who I am. And I will eat that now, today, modern day 2021. And if shit hits the fan tomorrow, I will eat like that 5 years from now. Nothing is going to change with my diet, okay? And nothing has to. But there's this perpetual idea, and there's this narrative. I think that's the word, narrative. And excuse me, I'm going to take a little quick break here. That's good. There's this narrative out there that long-term food storage is for foods that I'm only going to eat during shit hits the fan. So my diet's going to change. I have a certain diet now, but when shit hits the fan, I'm going to have a different diet. If that's how you want to do it, yes, by all means, do that. Does it have to be that way? No. Should it be that way? It's up to you. Me personally, there's no reason, and I think it's contra. I think it's contra to good order and health that I would change my diet just because infrastructure's down. Who gives a shit about the fucking infrastructure? I don't. Who gives a fuck what the grocery store's doing? I don't. I want to eat a certain way, so I will make sure that I keep that quality of diet. And I think, like I said, I think too many people get hyper focused on the capitalism portion of preparedness. It's all about what you can buy, and we're going to talk about that a little more as we go. But overall, you don't have to sacrifice your diet because shit hits the fan without rule of law, Tiawaki, all the bullshit, right? You don't have to sacrifice your diet. You can eat the same. You should eat the same. So this idea that long-term food storage is only for food that you plan to eat during a fucking grid down situation, I don't think is best practice. At least not for me. Now, if that's what you want to do, you can. And if you were going to do that, regardless of if you want to sustain a current diet path or you plan to get a new diet path, regardless of which one you want to do, how is it controversial to look at nutrient density? How is it controversial to look at micro, macro, and biological value? How is it controversial to ensure you're getting as much of your daily RDA, as you can? Again, if you can come up with a good argument as to why we shouldn't be looking at nutrient density when it comes to long-term food storage, and you can articulate yourself, please let me know in the comment section below. All right, myth number 5. All right, number 5. This one probably should be number 1, but the reason why I put on number 5 is just because I think that it's important to touch up on the other stuff. But this is super important too. You can't just add a multivitamin to unhealthy food in order to make the food healthy or to make the diet healthy, right? And as you saw from the screenshots earlier, just because you add a vitamin to an already deficient diet doesn't mean that you're making up your mins, right? It doesn't mean that you're making up what you're not putting in your body. Multivitamins are good. Take a multivitamin if you so wish, if you feel like you need it, or doctor's orders, whatever have you. But you can't take a McDonald's or any other bullshit diet, add a multivitamin to it, and make yourself healthy. It just doesn't work that way. So keep that in mind. I don't think I have to rattle on that too much. It makes no sense. So yes, if you want to take multivitamins, please, by all means, take your Flintstone vitamins, do what you got to do. But don't be under any illusion that just because you take a multivitamin and you eat a lot of high-calorie, low-nutrient-dense foods, that you're somehow making up your mins, or that you're making up your RDA, or that you're making that food healthy, or that you're consuming a now healthy diet. It's contraindicated to what's empirical, what makes sense, common sense at that. So, like I said, I don't see how it's controversial to look at that RDA. So, look at it. All right. Let's talk about myth number 6. All right, so before I start with prepper myth number 6, I think it's important that I caveat this first, right? Caveat this statement first. I'm a homesteader. Unapologetically, I'm a homesteader. And as my haters will tell you, I'm not a prepper. I don't know anything about preparedness because I'm a homesteader. Homesteading and preparedness is not the same. As you can clearly see in the comment section there in the very beginning of the video, I am a homesteader. So based upon what my haters say and believe, I know nothing about preparedness. And I think it's important that we caveat that, because I don't want them to be able to say that I didn't bring up their portion of the argument already, that I didn't bring up their side of things. So yes, keep that in mind, guys. The haters, based upon no empirical data or science, will tell you that everything that I said aforementioned should be ruled out because I'm a homesteader and not a prepper. So, number 6, long-term food storage is for acquiring things. I don't agree with that, but I think it's a good point. I think a lot of what we do in preparedness is acquiring things. I'd be lying if I said I didn't acquire things. In fact, I acquired a lot of good things, and I'm really excited to show and bring to you guys in future videos. And yeah, I think acquiring things can be really helpful. Now, is buying shit the only way to prepare for long-term food storage? It's buying foods, whether they meet the RDA or not, the only way to get long-term food storage? I don't think so. I think there are other ways to go about it. I think there's other systems in place that you can do to really help you, put you on that fast track to long-term food storage. One example, I think nature's provided probably the best long-term food storage that you can ask for. Before there was people, there was animals in the fields, and there was produce from the vine, so to speak, food from the vine, right? After humans are gone, there will still be animals in the field and food from the vine, so to speak, right? So I think it's important to look at this stuff from a very nuanced perspective. I think that, and this is kind of going to go into 10%, but I think nature's provided a lot of that. Now, there's nothing that says you can't help nature out, right? I know my grandfather's probably saying that he had a green thumb is really an understatement. I've seen him take dead plants, for all intents and purposes, bushes, that kind of thing, and bring life into them. He's the most amazing permaculturist I've ever met. One of the most amazing men I've ever met in my entire life. And so I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that, you can definitely utilize nature, especially to your advantage when it comes to long-term food storage. He brought a sapling over from Japan, a pear tree, and to this day, and that was back during the war, Vietnam War, and to this day, that pear tree still produces fruit. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And so, yes, I think there are other ways that you can get long-term food storage besides just buying rice, preparing it for long-term shelf life, and then sticking it in your garage. I think there's other ways to attain long-term food storage, and I think perennial plants, fruit trees, bushes, I think those provide a great aspect, even if it means you have to, set up something in your yard, whether you have a homestead or you live in the suburbs or whatever. I think those are great ways to, if not just supplement your current long-term food storage. I think that's a great way to look at it, a great thing to address. So yes, long-term food storage is just more than the shit that you buy at the store. So there's that. Now let's talk about our last long-term food storage myth. Prepper myth number 7. This is a good one. Homesteading is not sufficient for long-term food storage. Obviously, I disagree with that, but let's not just, don't take my word for it. Let's actually dive into the empirical. The argument that you're going to get from people is, what happens if something happens to all your animals and, heaven forbid I come home, knock on wood, and something happened to all my animals. What they would try to tell you is, well, if something happens to all your animals, there goes your long-term food storage. Well, no, not at all. You don't think that I have food stored up? You don't think that I haven't canned chicken that I've already grown out? Pork, beef, fish that I've caught in one of the largest rivers in my state that's just in my backyard. You don't think that I've done that already? I mean, you don't think that I have already taken these animals and preserved them. I mean, you really don't think I have a year's worth of food already? So if something were to happen to all my animals, that would be horrible. And you could definitely consider that a catastrophic loss. But all the food that I've already preserved and set aside, it's still there unless something happens to that food. And the same argument can be made to somebody who's just acquired a lot of shit. Well, what happens if something happens to all your acquired shit? Right? If something happens to all your acquired shit, I mean, then you're out of luck, right? You're shit out of luck. At least with the homesteading, if something happens to all my preserved food, well, at least I have my animals on the hoof. Or something happens to my animals on the hoof, at least I have my preserved food. Unless something happens to all of them, right? It's an added layer. So if anything, sustainability makes you more resilient in these types of situations, hands down. So the idea that by, being a homesteader, you can't be sufficient for long-term food storage needs is just ridiculous. There really is a belief out there that the only way to get to long-term food storage is through the grocery store or through, the capitalism market. It's just not true. It's not. And for those of you that have lived in rural communities or have lived in my case, I just realized that I didn't know this. So let me please explain something that I just learned recently. You have the city, well, at least the way it's broken down, at least in my region, or the way my state breaks things down. You have city, you have suburbs, you have rural, and then you have frontier. And it goes in that order. So you have the big cities, you have the suburbs, right? You have the country, and then you have the frontier. We technically live frontier. So that's even lower than rural, which makes sense. It actually makes sense now because I see signs all the time in my area that say that, your county fire line stops here. So basically, if something happens in this area, the county fire will not go to that. That's outside of their, technically, even though it's in the county, it's outside of their jurisdiction. They have no motivation or monetary interest in protecting that property. So technically, I live frontier. And so here where I live, there are many people that I know, love to death, close friends. They just based upon the socioeconomic level of things, they depend. Their hunting is how they survive. It's just the truth. They bag wild game, and that's how they're able to make it through the year. Like you hear about those people in Alaska and stuff. Those people really truly exist. There are people that depend on hunting in order to keep food in the mouths of their family, in their child's mouth. So, I know people that live this way, and yes, these people exist, and this is a lifestyle that many of us live. And so it's important to realize that, there are other ways, and it kind of goes to where we're talking about number 6. There are other ways to acquire a long-term food storage than just going to the grocery store and buying foods, or depending on capitalism to buy foods. There are other ways to go about it. Like I told you guys before, my brother got a damage tag for an elk. He bagged an elk. And for those of you guys that aren't sure what damage tags are or haven't heard that term, here in this state, if you are a property owner or a property owner, they can acquire from the state damage tags for animals that would destroy property. So we can give you a good example. If you're a farmer, right, and let's say you have 40, 50 acres of land, and you have 40, 50 head of cattle, which you could totally raise sustainably that many cattle easily on that amount of land, because we grow grass year round. I mean, pasture grass, alfalfa grows year round here. So, with that many cattle, you're sustainable, right? So you get a small hobby farm that has that much, that many cattle on that many acres. Cool. Well, when a herd of elk come in herds, they're big like cows. They're basically deer the size of cows, essentially, if we want to be honest with ourselves. And they and they can jump really high, just like deer. And so they are now in your paddock, or they're in your pasture eating the same food that your cows are eating. You're no longer in a sustainable you're no longer in a sustainable niche, so to speak. your environment is now, there's going to be food scarcity. There's going to be grass scarcity for your livestock because these elk are going to totally mow down and destroy all the vegetation and topography that you have in your farm, or in your farm, ranch, what have you. So you can apply for damage tags to the state to take out these elk. So let's say the state says, hey, I'll give you 12 damage tags so you can shoot 12 elk that are destroying your land, or they are taking resources away from your cattle. Boom. You can literally go out your front, cup of coffee in your favorite coffee mug, go out on your porch with your 300 Win Mag, take down 12 elk, take your tractor out there, hook them up, skin them right there, the whole 9 yards. So a lot of people here, if you are friends with farmers, and farmers, trust me, their cattle mean a lot to them, and they don't need elk coming in and destroying, and taking food resources away from their livestock, have no problem giving you a damage tag to take an elk. In fact, where I'm at, it's very common. It's a very, people make full family days out of it, and I it's very something dear to my heart. So yeah, you bag a 2,000-pound elk. It's a lot of take-home meat, and a lot of people, my brother will be able to live off that elk until next year, and that's what he does every single year. So don't limit yourself, guys. There's lots of ways to get long-term food storage. There's lots of ways to ensure that you are meeting your RDA, biological value, micro and macros, okay? I think that's important to look at, and I don't see why this should be considered to be controversial. It's not. I really want people to have long, healthy lives, and I really think that long-term food storage is important. But remember, it's more than just calories, guys. In fact, they put that nutritional values, they put those values on the same fucking label as they do the calories. It's on the same fucking label. So if it's there, why not read it? Take an extra few seconds, read it, actually understand what it is you're putting in your body. Like I said, I'm not saying don't buy your rice, beans, wheat, flour, corn. I'm not saying that. Buy whatever you want. But remember, if you're not taking that RDA into consideration, you are opening yourself up for deficiencies. And trying to catch up with nutrient deficiencies in a shit hits the fan scenario is dangerous, deadly, and you are intentionally putting yourself in a bad situation. When you're in that kind of situation, if you are really in a truly shit hits the fan situation, the last thing that you want to be dealing with is, shit, I have nutrient deficiencies, this fucking multivitamin isn't working, what am I going to do? If you can take care of those stuff now, that's one less thing to worry about when shit gets bad. So there you have it. Hope you guys liked the video. Hope you guys learned something. If you guys have questions, please leave them in the comment section below. If you guys are already taking this into consideration, which I have amazing following of very smart people, tell me what long-term food storage items that you are storing that has good, high-quality nutritional value. Share that with us so we can learn. I'm very happy and excited to see what you guys have to bring to the table, because I think that's important. So yeah, in the comment section below, guys, please tell us the nutrient-dense foods that you guys are storing. Tell us what you're storing. Tell us what your favorite preservation method is. Tell us what your thoughts are on, nutrient density, calories. Tell us about the nutrient-dense foods you guys like to store. Talk about maybe some multivitamins or supplements you guys are looking at storing or thinking about. Tell me about your favorite long-term storage preservation methods. Let us know about how you guys get your long-term food storage. You guys just buy stuff at the store? Do you guys hunt? Do you guys homestead? What fruits and vegetables have you guys found to be very easy to grow yourself and store yourself? All aspects of this conversation I think we should have in the comment section below. I look forward to seeing you guys there. And if you're one of my haters and you totally disagreed with this video, please, like I told this guy, like I tell everybody, please empirically come at me. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me, leave your sources. Let's get better and smarter together. That's all I have for you guys. Hope you guys have a good one. And as always, guys, long live the Republic.